Hi, I'm Ron Lawson from Dirtbike Magazine, and thanks for tuning in to our 2023 Dual Sport video series. Today we're in the San Bernardino Mountains and we've got a recipe for fun. We have the Beta 350 RRS, the Husqvarna FE350S, and the KTM 350 EXC. They are three of the greatest dual sport bikes of all time, and we're going to ride them. We're going to find out which one we like best. The dirt was wet here in Southern California, and we had three brand new versions of the new 350 dual sport bikes. We rode them all stock with the exception of tires, which we upgraded to Metzeler MC360s. Those are classified as mid-hard terrain tires, but still DOT approved and street legal. Let's start with a look at the 2023 Beta 350 RRS. There are four Beta dual sport bikes that look pretty much the same. The 350, 390, 430, and 500 are all great machines with different personalities. This demonstrates what we have often said about how motor characteristics and power delivery affect handling as much as frame geometry, suspension, or weight. The 350 has the same chassis and most of the same motor parts as the others. It differs only in bore and stroke. The suspension is by Sachs, and the brakes are Nissin. Like I said, we put Metzeler tires on all the bikes, but in truth, the Michelin tires that come stock on the Beta aren't that bad. The Metzlers are just more aggressive and better for our needs. The Beta offers traction control and two different maps on a little switch in front of the fuel tank. This is a little unusual for a dual sport bike. EFI maps have to be government approved, so they are usually locked and tamper-proof. The Beta is a little louder than most dual sport bikes too. When it comes to noise and emissions, Beta can operate much closer to the edge, whereas a big company like KTM has a lot more to lose if they get in trouble. The 350 RRS has a bunch of nice features, including handguards, a radiator fan, and fold-up mirrors. Best of all, it comes with a Trailtech Voyager GPS. It still sells for less than the KTM or the Husky, but the MSRP is $11,499. On our scale, it weighs 253 pounds without fuel. Moving on to the Husky FE350S, this is a bike that appeals to the racer in most of us. It's a little closer in design to a full-on motocross bike than either of the others. The FE350S has been unchanged since 2020, and at that time the frame was pretty similar to the one that Husky was racing in Supercross and motocross. This is one of the few bikes in the Husqvarna line that didn't get a new frame and motor makeover this year, although that might come in 2024. The motor is identical to the one in the KTM 350 EXC-F, but the Husky's frame, rear suspension, and a number of components are different. First off, the rear suspension uses linkage. The triple clamp is machined rather than cast, and the brakes are by BrakeTech, as is the hydraulic clutch. The handlebar is a Pro Taper, the rims are DID, and the bodywork is distinctly Husqvarna. In order to make it meet EPA noise standards, Husqvarna placed a reed valve in the intake. They say this also improves low RPM throttle response. The tires are Continental TK C80s, which are very street-oriented. Unlike the Beta, which could have been tested with the stock tires, we had to replace the Husky's tires with the Metzelers before he could ride very hard off-road. So give the first bonus point to Beta. As delivered, the Husky does not have rim locks installed, but they do come with the bike a la carte. It's also a good idea to balance the tires. There is no map switch, but the bike does come with handguards, a skid plate, and a radiator fan. It's the most expensive of the three at $12,249, and the weight splits the difference between the KTM and the Beta at 245 pounds without fuel. Now let's look at the KTM. KTM wasn't the first company to make a serious dirt-worthy dual sport bike, but you can give them credit for making the concept truly legit. The KTM 350 EXC-F goes back to 2012 and was most recently revamped in 2020. KTM's off-road and dual sport models continue to use PDS rear suspension without linkage. This is the most significant difference between the current KTM and the Husqvarna dual sport bikes. PDS has the advantage of being about 6 pounds lighter, so the bike weighs 239 pounds without fuel. It's one of the lightest dual sport bikes on the market. PDS also provides greater ground clearance than linkage designs. Otherwise, the two Austrian dual sport bikes are similar. They both use WP Explore forks with steel coil springs. The KTM uses a cast triple clamp to hold the fork on, and if you look up close, there are a number of other components that differ as well. KTM has Brembo brakes and a Brembo clutch master cylinder. It also uses a Necken handlebar and Excel rims. As far as the motors go, the KTM and Husky have 6-speed gearboxes and double overhead cams with 4 valves and finger follower valve trains, just like the motocross bikes. The KTM also uses a reed valve in the air boot, although that boot has a different shape than the Huskies because of the PDS shock design, which allows more space. That and a different airbox design are the only design features that might account for any difference in performance between them. The tires are the same as the Huskies, Continentals, which were replaced with Metzeler MC360s. The KTM sells for $12,149. Up front, you have to understand that all three of these motorcycles are off-road bikes first and everything else second. They aren't street commuters and they aren't race bikes. One of the biggest reasons for that is they don't have enough power for wide open roads or motocross tracks. Where they excel is on the trail. These are bikes made for technical off-road rides connected by short bits of road. In that setting, the compromises required for their street legal status isn't that apparent unless you're really obsessed with peak power. In order to pass DOT and EPA regulations, all three are very quiet. Unlike EPA bikes in the past, though, these three are free of glitches like coughing, popping, stalling, and overheating. They all run clean and cool. Of the three, the Beta is easily the most powerful. It runs smoothly down low without any issues and quickly climbs to a respectable mid-range. After that, it continues to rev where the other two taper off. On top, the Beta has a clear advantage. It's also louder, even though we still consider it to be very quiet compared to virtually any other dirt bikes. As you might expect, the KTM and Husky are similar in performance. The KTM has just a little more to offer in the middle and on top, but both have great table manners throughout the RPM range. They run so cleanly that it's hard to believe they meet all the emission requirements. That smooth, flawless engine performance allows all three bikes to excel on tight, difficult trails. When you don't have to worry about the dreaded cough and die syndrome, it's so much easier to climb rock ledges and clear logs. All three are outstanding in that regard. On more wide open trails and in deep sand, the Husky and the KTM run into their limitations much earlier than the Beta. You simply have to shift the Austrian bikes more, whereas the Beta gives you the option of staying in one gear and using its RPM advantage. None of these bikes are especially adept at wide open desert. They just don't have the displacement and you get bored quickly. Likewise, they aren't quite right for long stints on the high highway. They vibrate, and if the wheels aren't balanced, they bounce. The KTM and Husky are more comfortable than the Beta though, which has a hard seat and a wide tank. The three bikes all have a very different feel on the trail. The Beta is the most spread out and seems like a larger bike than the other two. It's a little taller and gives you the feeling that you're sitting on top, whereas the others make you feel settled into a cockpit. The Beta also feels longer and a bit more stable. The suspension is soft, of course, which is appropriate for a dual sport bike. It's excellent in rocks and on low-speed technical trails. When you get into deep whoops, though, it's easily overwhelmed and prone to quick chassis movements. The KTM has a feel that's typical of PDS bikes. It's fairly level at lower speeds and might even be the best at absorbing rocks and trail jump. But as the trail pace picks up, it develops a bit of a stink bug attitude. The rear end unloads and the front end dives. It already has much quicker steering than the Beta, and that gets more pronounced at higher speeds. The Husky is a little more level in most situations. It's very soft, just like the other two, and very good in rocks. It struggles with higher speeds and bigger bumps, just like the others, but it's the least prone to chassis movement. That's typical of linkage suspension. Also typical of linkage suspension is a tendency to hang up on logs. The Husky's linkage hangs down much lower than the Beta's and is shaped in such a way that it's more likely to stop you in your tracks. It's impossible to have a discussion about dual sport bikes without talking about modifications. That's especially true here because all three bikes could use a little more fire. We simply have to stress that any modifications are ineffective without first remapping the ignition. That technically makes the bike into a competition vehicle. With that out of the way, we also have to say that reflashing the stock ignitions is very difficult and can go wrong. New ECUs from Vortex and GET are available but very expensive. JT Jetting has a piggyback modifier that sells for considerably less. It's best to talk to someone who has done it. We've had pretty good success with the guys at Slavens and Takomoto. Here are some random notes and observations from our staff. The Beta's brakes are powerful but grabby. The Huskies have a good feel but aren't as strong as the KTM's, which are both powerful and progressive. All the bikes can be hard to start on cold mornings. Jumper cables had to be used more than once. The Beta is the easiest to jump because the seat pops off with the push of a button. The Beta also has the provision for a kickstarter. It's impossible to provide a meaningful fuel range because no two rides and no two riders will have the same results. We can only report that the three bikes made it to the end of a 60-mile trail ride, all single track, and there was a little despair. The Beta's fuel light came on around mile 50. We love radiator fans. All three have them, and all three need them. The Husky and KTM have huge mirrors that always get in the way. The Betas fold up, but have a plastic hinge that can break. All three have bouncy license plate bracket. They will eventually get sucked into the rear wheel and torn to shreds. It's only a matter of time. There are several aftermarket alternatives when that happens, but it's best to address it before you lose or damage your license plate. Same goes for the blinkers. And then, of course, there's the Voyager GPS on the Beta, which we love. Even with their quirks and imperfections, the 350 dual sport bikes are more fun than just about anything that rolls through the dirt bike shop. One is the most fun? In stock form, the Beta has to be considered the ultimate winner. It's the most powerful and offers the best value. If, on the other hand, you have lots of money to spend and make modifications to mold the bike into your own special creation, then the Husky and the KTM might have more potential. Just be sure you do a good job, though. The Beta has set the bar pretty high. We hope you got something out of our 350 dual sport comparison. We sure enjoyed making it. We have other videos to check out as well. You can also go to dirtbikemagazine.com or go find us on the newsstand for more information. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.